Who's hunting us? Those were the last words crackling through a Taliban gunman's radio, moments before a bullet tore through his skull. For 11 months, 68 American soldiers died in Tora Zara, all struck by bullets from enemies no one ever saw. They called them the Scorpions. The Navy SEALs sent one man, Lieutenant Eli Warren, the last surviving sniper of SEAL Team 4, a man who buried his teammates in the scorching sand and swore no one would leave this desert alive. But when the enemy started calling his name over the radio, he realized, in the game of hunter and prey, the line is so thin that the one who pulls the trigger first loses. Morning broke over Tora Zara like a pane of thin, transparent glass, cold and fragile. The sand was dusted with a faint mist. The wind scratched fine lines along the edges of rocks. And the sun, barely risen, already burned with the white heat of a furnace. On the makeshift wall of Forward Ridge Outpost, a row of photographs stretched in silent formation. 68 faces, their ages frozen between two numbers, their eyes still seeming to ask an unfinished question. Eli Warren paused at the 17th frame from the left. His jaw clenched so tightly the muscles trembled as if they might snap. The man in the photo wore a backward cap, his smile caught mid-bloom. His friend. He didn't touch the picture. He stepped back half a pace, leaving a gap between himself and the lost as if it were a ritual. The metallic tang of the concertina wire mingled with the smell of generator fuel. A few desert birds swooped low, silent. In the distance, a truck's dust trail rose like a slender needle pointing to the wind. Eli tried to breathe deeply, but his chest only drew in air so hot it tasted of sand. Lieutenant Eli Warren, the last sniper of SEAL Team 4, returned to Afghanistan after 4 months of recovery. The paperwork read, "Combat status. Conditionally fit." The psychiatrist's notes were brief. Interrupted sleep, recurring memories, prolonged silence. But those lines said nothing of the moment he watched his friend's hands slip from the rock ledge in Marja, or the feeling of being alive while another's final breath still echoed in his ears. The only thing that truly remained was silence. And silence needed no cure. In the briefing room, Colonel Parker spoke as if pulling a pin. Terrain with 3 mountain ridges cradling the supply route. Effective shooting range 500–800 meters. Winds shifting with the rhythm of morning and evening. The Scorpions, the invisible sniper group, always fired when the shadows stretched long enough to split a patrol's line of sight. They came, fired twice, then vanished like salt dissolving in water. Counter-sniper teams rotated in. UAVs clung to the sky. Valley sweeps combed every inch. The result was relentlessly the same. Nothing. Eli sat across from a plastic-covered map, his hand resting on the black notebook tucked in his chest pocket. The notebook belonged to Captain Marcus Reyes, his former commander, stained with a dried brown mark at the bottom corner. The final page, scrawled in hurried script. "They hunt us the way we hunted them." When Parker paused, the junior officers began debating in numbers. Eli stayed silent. He looked up, his voice calm as still water. "I need all the grid coordinates of the 68 shootings. Time, direction of movement, wind conditions, sun position." A young officer shrugged, polite enough to smile but unable to hide his exhaustion. "We've run it. There's no pattern." Eli looked at him, as if staring through the gap between two peaks. "If there's no pattern, you haven't sat with it long enough." The words dropped onto the concrete floor like a dry pebble, without echo. Parker nodded, jerking his chin toward a crate of files. "Take it all. And a tent for yourself. Dear audience, grab a glass of water, take a moment to relax, and keep listening to the story. The twists are still to come. And please drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always a joy to see who's joining us from around the world. Drop a 1 in the comments if you find this story gripping, so we can keep bringing you more captivating tales. Eli's tent was pitched against the perimeter fence, where the wind howled through the barbed wire like a bow scraping an out-of-tune violin. He spread the files across the floor, uncapped a pencil, and opened Reyes' notebook. The oil lamp hung low, its weary golden light casting shadows on the canvas, outlining a hunched figure like a statue. First report, 6:41. Sunlight slanting from the southeast, wind at 7 miles per hour. Patrol halted for an unscheduled check. Second report, 17:12. Shadows covering half the ridge, wind shifting. 17th report. Bullet trajectory from a 15-degree angle, firing elevation 35 meters above the target. He drew thin diagonal lines, connecting scattered points with an invisible thread only someone accustomed to silence could trace. The radio man outside stopped by twice, leaving a jug of cool water by the tent flap. The kid said nothing. Eli nodded faintly in thanks, then bent back over the days and months of others' lives. When the clock's hands shivered past midnight, the generator hiccuped. The moment of total darkness reminded him of Marja, the acrid smell of gunpowder, the warmth of blood on his gloves. He closed his eyes, relaxed his shoulders, and let the pain pass like a gust of wind. In that darkness, he heard Reyes's voice from a distant memory. Patience isn't waiting for time. Patience is making time stand still so you can see what others miss. The next morning, he drew a white chalk line on the map. It looked like a careless scratch, but to him, it was the edge of a blade, the boundary between the safe spots where American troops liked to pause and the firing angles shielded by sunlight. By noon, a second and third chalk line appeared. 3 invisible jaws clamped around the supply route, day after day, patient as a predator tracking familiar prey. On a cracked sheet of paper he wrote, "They don't choose the terrain, they choose habits." The map grew dense with his own symbols, wind arrows, black dots for shooting points, hollow squares for temporary hides. He crossed out impossible positions to focus on the possible. By the time dusk split the camp with a harsh orange streak, Eli leaned against a tent pole, peering through a canvas slit at the barren ground. A Humvee rolled past, someone in the back blasting an old rock song. The guitar's screech cut short as the vehicle vanished behind a fortification. He suddenly thought of evenings back home in Coronado. Soft sand, the briny smell of waves, joggers leaving long footprints in the wet shore. It felt like another life. On the second night, he layered data points, calculating simple equations in his head like breathing, wind, elevation, temperature, shadows. The numbers meant nothing until they snapped into a shape. Near dawn, with the oil lamp nearly spent, he saw 3 faint circles overlapping 3 ideal hunting nests. The scorpion cycled through every 8-10 days. He wrote in the notebook, "No ghosts, just schedules." The pencil lead broke. He sharpened it again. Eli stood, pushed aside the tent flap, and inhaled the metallic dawn air. From the east, a thin streak of light stitched the sky shut. He knew he'd found what he needed. And he knew what he needed more. To wait. Not one day. Maybe more. But to wait the right way. Turning back, he opened Ray's notebook to the final page, placing it on the map at the intersection of the 3 chalk circles. At the bottom, he added his own line, a vow to the departed. "I'll sit here until they're the ones asking, 'Who's hunting us?'" Desert winds carried 2 things, sand and memories. Sand slipped into every crevice, erasing footprints, while memories seeped through the skull, clinging to the deepest corners of the mind. That night, as the camp sank into the steady hum of the generator, Eli Warren sat before the flickering oil lamp, flipping through the worn pages of the black leather notebook. Each stroke, each stain seemed to carry the breath of Captain Marcus Reyes, his mentor, commander, and the brother he never got to bid farewell. Reyes was the rare kind of man, SEALs called by name, not rank. He didn't teach soldiers how to kill. He taught them how to see life. Once, during training in Coronado, Ray set down his rifle and made the team stare at the horizon. "What do you see?" a rookie answered. "Just the sea." Reyes nodded and said, "When you only see the sea, you haven't looked long enough. Where there's movement, there's choice." Eli wrote that in the notebook's first page when he was 24. Now, in the dim light, those words trembled as if the writer's hand still shook. The more he read, the more he realized the notebook wasn't just a tactical log. It was a sniper's psychology. Entries about wind direction, humidity, and distance were interspersed with quiet reflections. "Don't aim at the body. Aim at the habit." Or, in bold ink, "Patience isn't waiting, it's making the other guy act first." He remembered the last morning in Marja. As the team moved along a dry stream bed, Reyes paused, staring oddly west. He whispered, "They're watching us." The words lasted half a second before the first bullet tore through the lead soldier's headset. Then chaos. Dust, gunpowder, screams. Eli remembered the sand hitting his face as he dragged Reyes from the rubble, and those eyes staring skyward. Blood ran from temple to collar, fingers still clutching the notebook. "Take it," Reyes gasped, voice breaking. "If they come back, let them shoot at their own shadows." Then silence. For 4 months, Eli avoided opening the notebook, afraid each page would carry the scent of old blood. But tonight in Tora Zara, as the darkness thickened like oil, he understood why Reyes wrote what he did. He switched on an old recorder, a training tape Reyes once used. "Eli, shooting isn't about proving you're accurate. It's about understanding the other guy's mistake. Every sniper has a heartbeat. When you know it, you'll know when he holds his breath." Eli played it on loop until the static hissed like waves. He closed the notebook, looked through the tent slit. The sky was full of stars, silent enough that he could hear his own heartbeat blend with the wind. The next morning, he took the notebook outside. The sun pierced the dust, light slicing through each grain. He drove a pencil into the ground, then marked the map, each ink dot a recorded attack. From above, they looked like scattered notes on a sheet of violent music. But when connected by wind and timing, Eli saw 3 smooth curves emerge like Reyes' familiar signature. "You're still teaching me, even in death," Eli murmured. He returned to the tent, tuned the radio to SEAL Team 4's old frequency. Only static crackled. Then a sudden voice broke through, distorted, distant. "Warren, you reading his words again?" Eli froze, cranking the volume, but the signal vanished. He stared at the radio, hands stilled. No one at the base knew that frequency except Team 4. Or, the Scorpions knew. A chill ran down his spine. He sat, reopened the notebook. On the last page, Reyes's words, written in blood. "They hunt us the way we hunted them." Eli wrote beneath it. "And now, I'll hunt them the way you taught me." As he closed the notebook, light from the tent slit fell on the cracked leather cover. Reyes. Field Manual 04. In the corner, under dust, a tiny carving. R. W. Reyes Warren. He'd never known when or where he and Reyes carved those initials. Maybe a soldier's joke, or a premonition. Either way, it told him this mission was no longer just duty. It was an unfinished promise, and the notebook, not just a relic, but the compass of his final hunt. Eli gripped the notebook, inhaling the searing desert wind. Far off, the sun began swallowing the ridge, stretching his shadow across the sand like a thread. A faint instinct stirred. Somewhere out there, in those hills, the enemy was opening a similar notebook, logging his own numbers. The third day was dawning, and the game between hunters had yet to see a trigger pulled first. Morning in Tora Zara was never truly quiet. It only traded noises. As the sun rose, the wind fell silent, and insects took its place. The grit of sand against ammo crates, the creak of expanding metal, the coughs from parched throats. Amid those sounds, Eli Warren entered Forward Ridge's briefing room, a tent thick with the stench of sweat, gunpowder, and something caught between despair and resignation. On a dust-covered map, Colonel Parker pointed to numbered red circles. Each dot is a death. 68 in 11 months. Same attack style, same distance, same ending. His voice was hoarse, like grinding stone. The other officers stood around, coffee cups in hand, eyes sunken. No one said it aloud, but the room shared a single thought. We control nothing here. Parker turned to Eli. We need a solution, not another obituary. Eli didn't answer immediately. He studied the map, then the wall of photos behind 68 faces staring back, each a repeated ending rendered meaningless. Finally he said, I don't need more men. I need silence. The room turned. Captain Monroe, who'd lost 3 men under his command, gave a dry laugh. Silence? You think silence will kill them? Eli lifted a coffee mug from the table, staring at the dark liquid inside. No, he said. But silence lets me hear who's talking. No one responded. Parker watched him for a moment, then nodded. You've got 3 days. Don't make me add another photo to the wall. That first night, Eli set up a makeshift observation post on the camp's eastern edge, where moonlight spilled across the sand like silver threads. He lay prone, scope trained on the dark mountain range. Above, faint UAV lights blinked like cold fireflies. He heard the steady radio reports, the coordinator's voice a looping melody without rhythm. Then he switched off the radio. Silence. Not the silence of peace, but the kind that made skin prickle, as if the world held its breath. He recalled Reyes's words. In war, noise is your friend. When it's gone, someone's aiming at your head. At midnight, Eli crawled into a rock gully, eyes fixed on the northern hills. Something was there, not movement, but the sense of it. A small black dot on the ridge, unclear if rock or man. He adjusted his scope, held his breath, centered the crosshair, but the wind shifted. The dot vanished. He lowered the rifle, squinting into the distance. Maybe an illusion, or, as Reyes once said, the hunter is always the first to be seen. The next morning, Eli returned to base. The patrol team was gearing up. Monroe approached, his look half doubt, half mockery. Find anything, SEAL? Only what you've missed. What's that? Habits. Monroe raised an eyebrow. We're in a place with no rules. Eli replied slowly. Everything has a rhythm. Even death. He spread the map on the table, pointing to 3 intersecting points. They don't shoot randomly. They pick angles based on afternoon winds and morning sun. Every 8 to 10 days, they return to the same areas. Parker leaned against a post, listening. You sure? 70%. 70's not enough in war. Eli nodded. But enough to keep another photo off the wall. The room fell silent. Parker studied him, then said slowly, All right. You've got the green light. We'll check in via radio every 12 hours. If you don't respond after 3 days, add my photo to the second row. Eli finished, and Parker understood. That afternoon, Eli checked his weapon one last time. The M2010 gleamed, its scope calibrated to each mil dot. He packed 4 rations, a radio, and Reyes's notebook. In the corner, Monroe tossed him a small worn cloth. Take this. My team's flag. Maybe it'll remind you someone wants you back. Eli took it, tucked it into his pocket. I don't need luck, he said. Just the right moment. As dusk fell, he left the base, walking through the shadows of overlapping hills. Atop the antenna tower, a signal light blinked slowly, like a distant heartbeat. Each step sank into the sand, stirring a layer of memories. The radio crackled in his earpiece with Parker's voice. Warren, confirm signal check. He replied curtly. Signal clear, moving out. Call me Hunter. From then, only the wind remained. He stopped at the 3rd ridge, where the map predicted the next attack cycle. Before him, the valley opened like the gaping maw of a silent beast, waiting. Somewhere below, the scorpions lurked, counting the breaths of those they thought were prey. Eli lay down, adjusted his scope, and planted Monroe's small flag in the sand, a quiet red streak amid the yellow. He smiled, his voice a prayer for the departed. This time, let's see who pulls the trigger first. Far off, the sun sank, slicing the sky with a streak of blood, and in that moment, the wind stopped. Silence. A sign, an instinct, an invitation to the hunt just begun. The first night passed in the silence of stone. Eli Warren lay nestled in a mountain crevice, his camouflage poncho draped over him like a second skin. The temperature dropped to near 40 degrees Fahrenheit, his breath forming faint wisps like threads. Above, stars burned fiercely, but the only light that mattered was through his M2010 scope, where every movement was magnified tenfold, where each gust whispered of death. He'd chosen a position 40 meters above the valley floor, the crossroads of 3 escape routes. The Scorpions favored, a perfect exit if he were them, and because Reyes taught him to think like the beast to catch it, he lay there, waiting, as if he were one of them. The first day passed without a sound. No smoke, no stirred sand, only the wind through the rock crevices, carrying the metallic scent of abandoned wrecks below. Eli barely moved. Every motion was measured in milliseconds, as if his body were part of the terrain. On the second day, the sun bore down heavier. The sand was hot enough to cook unspent rounds. Eli sipped water sparingly, gauging wind direction with a white thread tied to his rifle's muzzle. The wind shifted to 9 miles per hour, northwest. He noted it, not out of need, but habit, what Reyes called the ritual of survival. That afternoon, from the valley's south, gunfire erupted. 2 shots, sharp and dry. Then silence. Eli switched on the radio, hearing Parker's voice. Delta Patrol ambushed. 2 casualties. Firing source unknown. He scanned the opposite ridge through his scope. Through faint smoke, he glimpsed a small dust cloud swept by the wind, a withdrawal sign. He estimated the distance. About 800 meters. Too far, too late. The Scorpions had done their work. Always the same. 2 shots, 1 retreat. Like clockwork. Eli wrote in the notebook, Day 2. 15. 14. 2 shots. Northwest wind. Cycle intact. Night fell. The wind softened. The sand cooled. And he noticed something strange. If they followed the cycle, the 4th day would be next. But based on today's attack coordinates and firing direction, where would they strike? He spread the map, pinning 3 points with his dagger. The lines formed a near-perfect triangle, its apex pointing to his current position. They'll come back here, he whispered. Like returning to a chessboard. Eli checked his ammo, wiped the barrel, and inserted his earpiece. He disabled the signal light, cutting all contact with the base. If his model was right, on the 4th day, around 3 p.m., the Scorpions would appear. Day 3. Nothing happened. Only waiting. Reyes once said, "The one who endures silence, longest lives." Eli counted his heartbeats. 56 per minute. Steady as a clock. Each gust felt like the breath of an opponent across the valley, also lying still, holding their breath, waiting for his mistake. In this game, no one was truly invisible. Both just tried to be slower than the other by a single breath. He opened Reyes's notebook. On one page, in slanted script, no ghosts on the battlefield, only those too skilled to be seen. He read it over and over until dawn broke. The 4th day arrived in blinding light. The wind reversed, scorching, carrying fine dust in swirling eddies. Eli glued his eye to the scope. The clock read 15:2. 1 minute. 2. 3. Then, in the crosshair, movement. 2 figures. Cautious. Moving slowly through rocks 600 meters northeast. One carried a Dragunov, the other a radio. They chose the exact spot he'd predicted. Their movements were too precise, Too practiced, as if he were watching a recording of himself. Eli slowed his breathing, gripping the rifle. Range, 610 meters. Wind, 8 miles per hour. He adjusted for deflection, elevation. One breath, then held. As the radio operator bent to adjust the antenna, he squeezed the trigger. The suppressed shot cracked dryly, barely echoing. The man collapsed. The second spun, still orienting, when the next bullet pierced his neck. Both bodies fell, as if strings were cut. Eli held position, eye on the scope, waiting 15 seconds. No movement. No response. He activated the radio. 2 targets down. Send coordinates. Possible third. I'll hold position for 30 minutes. Parker replied curtly. Roger. Sweep team inbound. Eli set the rifle down, carefully opened the notebook, and wrote, Day 4, 15-17. 2 bodies. 1 remains. Below, he drew a small circle around the third map symbol. The last scorpion, he muttered. Won't wait long. The wind shifted, carrying the faint smell of gunpowder, mixed with sand and sun. Somewhere, a voice crackled through his earpiece. Not Parker's. Eli Warren, you're just as I thought. He froze. The voice was low, slightly distorted by static. Not a ghost. Not a hallucination. A survivor. The last of the scorpions. Eli gave a faint smile, switched off the radio, and added one final line to the notebook. He knows me. And I know him. He looked to the horizon. The desert seemed to inhale deeply, ready to erupt. The true hunt had just begun. Dawn on the 5th day exploded in dry silver light, ricocheting off the sand like stray rounds. Eli Warren woke from 2 hours of fitful sleep, each dream broken by the same sound. The voice on the radio. Eli Warren, you're just as I thought. He sat up, wiped condensation from his scope, eyes still red from sleeplessness. In that moment, he knew the hunt was no longer a mission. It was a conversation in gunfire, and the last scorpion had just spoken. The morning wind blew lightly, southeast, 6 miles per hour. Eli noted it in the notebook. Numbers calmed him, they were the only language he still trusted. In war, people lied, emotions betrayed. But math never did. He opened the radio, speaking one short sentence. Hunter. In position. Maintain silence. No response. Parker understood, replying, Roger. All signals noted. Then Eli cut the signal, removed the antenna, and left himself alone with the world. He crawled through a rock gully, descending 100 meters along the ridge. From there, he could watch all 3 routes the enemy might take: west to the dry riverbed, east to the scree field, south to the black, wing-shaped boulders where he suspected the enemy would nest. At his side, the M2010 weighed heavy, its cold steel reflecting the morning sun like a freshly honed blade. At 9:17, the first sound came. A faint noise, almost non-existent, a rock falling, echoing 3 times before fading. Eli stopped breathing. In his scope, a shadow flickered across a crevice opposite. The figure moved fast, professionally, using sunlight to mask direction, a sniper's trick. Rami? Eli exhaled, the name like a broken prayer. Khalid Rami, the Scorpion's eye, per intelligence, the one who ambushed SEAL Team 4 Inches Marja. He knew American tactics, even trained with old Soviet special forces. And now, he was hunting the man who dismantled his team. Eli turned the scope slightly, centering on the shadow's edge. Rami hadn't fully appeared, just a silhouette cutting through sunlight. Range, 1,000 meters, too far for a sure shot in shifting wind. He chose silence. Noon. Temperature hit 118 degrees Fahrenheit. The air shimmered like glass. Eli lay pressed to the ground, sweat tracing his spine, salty and cold. Each minute dragged like an hour. In his view, nothing, only the buzz of flies around the 2 bodies he'd dropped yesterday. now baked dry by the sun. He closed his eyes, listening to his heartbeat. 54. 55. 56. The wind eased northwest. He opened his eyes, rechecked the scope. No shadow. But at the scree field's edge, a small object glinted a scope's reflection. Eli held his breath. Rami was watching him. The duel began. Both snipers lay still, 1,000 meters apart, between silent ridges. No one moved. Only fine sand drifted like ash, the wind spinning small vortices that dissolved. In his scope, Eli saw a faint flash, not a shot, but the glint of Rami's lens. He wanted Eli to see him. A game of patience, Eli thought. He's inviting me to shoot first. Time crawled. 7 minutes. 9. 11. Sweat stung his eyes, blurring his vision, but he didn't dare blink. Rhea's voice echoed. The predator who acts first loses. Rami didn't fire. He was waiting for Eli's mistake. The wind slowed, the sun weakened, shadows shifted. Eli knew in seconds. Sunlight would hit his position. Rami would see him clear as a target. He inhaled deeply. 1 beat. 2. 3. As the sun touched the crevice's edge, Eli rolled slowly, shifting 20 inches right just out of the light. Instantly, a shot tore the silence. Dirt and rock sprayed where he'd been. You shot first, Eli whispered. He rotated the bolt, aimed into the rising smoke where Rami would still be adjusting his scope. He fired. The shot echoed through the mountains. Through the lens, Eli saw the enemy's body jerk, then collapse, motionless. He held position, waiting 10 seconds, 20, 5 minutes. No sound. Finally, he stood, slid down the ridge, and approached the body. Sand crunched under his boots, the wind flapping Monroe's red flag behind him like a farewell. Rami lay amid the rubble, eyes open, staring skyward. Eli's bullet had pierced through his scope, straight into his heart. Beside the body was a black leather notebook, identical to Rhea's. Eli flipped to the last page. Shaky handwriting. The predator who acts first loses. The same words. The same lesson. Eli looked up at the ridge. Afternoon light fell across his face, bathing both bodies, once shadows of each other, in the same blinding glow. He activated the radio. This is Hunter. Target down. Send coordinates. I'll wait for recovery. Parker's voice came, light as a breath. Roger, Hunter. We read you. Good work. Eli switched off, tucked Rami's notebook next to Rhea's in his pocket. 2 notebooks. 2 sides of the same game. The wind strengthened, covering all footprints. Tora Zara fell silent again. Somewhere in the desert, a memory echoed from his teacher. Hunting isn't about killing, Eli. It's about knowing who's really looking through the scope. And for the first time in years, Eli felt unwatched. 3 days after Eli Warren confirmed the final target's elimination, Tora Zara's desert grew quiet as a finished page. No more shots echoed between ridges. No more terse casualty reports each morning. Forward, ridge outpost became unnervingly still. Sentries changed shifts without words. Cooks heard the hum of flies in the air. And Parker began to believe this silence, the silence Eli sought, was the sign of an end. On the 4th morning, a transport helicopter swept over the valley, landing at the old rendezvous. Eli sat in the back, gazing through the window at dunes rolling like golden waves. For 3 weeks, he'd barely spoken. Medical checks deemed him stable. But no one knew the desert still spoke in his mind. As the chopper landed, Colonel Parker waited. He handed Eli a folder. Intel confirmed. The notebook from Rami led to a weapons cache west of Kandahar. Drones swept and destroyed it all. No ambushes in 6 months. He paused, meeting Eli's eyes. You ended it. Eli didn't reply. He opened the folder, scanning aerial photos. A charred gorge, broken Dragonovs, a half-burned radio. Beside them, a smaller photo. The wall of 68 faces at Forward Ridge. No new additions. It's done, Parker said softly, almost to himself. We won. Eli closed the folder, his gaze steady. There's no winning in this game, sir. Only the last one standing. The medal ceremony was simple, almost hushed. Sunset light gleamed across the military airstrip, reflecting off the bronze star pinned to his chest. As the officer read the citation, Eli looked at the troops below. Among them was Captain Monroe, who'd mocked him at the first briefing. Now, he was the first to clap. After the ceremony, Monroe approached, extending a hand. You were right. Silence is a weapon. Eli shook it, replying, only if you know how to listen. He left the base a week later. The flight back to the States was at night, the cargo hold smelling of fuel, lights blinking red like a heartbeat. Eli sat by the door, holding both leather notebooks, Reyes's and Rami's. As the plane crossed latitudes, he opened them side by side. The pages differed, but the layout was eerily similar. Wind speeds, sun angles, distances, and the same philosophy. To know the enemy is to know yourself. He realized in that hunting game, no one was purely hunter or prey. They were mirrors reflecting distorted versions of each other. Reyes, Rami, and now him all learned the same lesson, only their endings differed. When the plane landed at Coronado, sea breeze hit, salty and sharp, unlike Tora Zara's dry bite. Eli stepped onto the tarmac, letting the wind muss his hair. A young officer greeted him, saying he'd been assigned to teach at the Navy sniper school. Eli only nodded. That evening, he opened his small room by the shore. On the table sat his M2010 cleaned, reassembled perfectly, and a wooden plaque engraved. Captain Marcus Reyes, teacher of the silent. A gift from an old teammate. Eli sat, opened Rey's notebook. The final page remained. The predator who acts first, loses. He turned to a blank page, writing beneath his own line from Tora Zara. And the survivor must learn to live with the silence he creates. In the days that followed, he began teaching. His first class had 7 students. Young, eager, loud. He didn't talk much. He made them lie down, listen to the wind, count their breaths. One laughed. Sir, we're here to shoot, not meditate. Eli replied, if you can't hear silence, you'll never hear the bullet. The class went quiet. He left them there. 15 minutes, then asked, what did you hear? A soft voice answered, the wind. Eli nodded. Wrong. That was time passing. And you just heard it. At night, Coronado was calm. Eli sat on his porch, the 2 notebooks side by side. In Rami's, on the first page, a faint signature, R.W. The same mark Reyes carved. A small mystery he'd never solve. Maybe Rami studied under one of Reyes' teachers, or perhaps war always repeated through those patient enough to watch it. Far off, waves lapped gently. He closed his eyes, hearing the sea breeze, no longer carrying distorted radio voices. Just silence, clean, free of gunpowder and sand. In that moment, Eli knew. The war ended not when the last bullet left the barrel, but when he stopped watching his back. The morning breeze in Coronado carried salt and iron. It brushed the skin, wove through the pines by the shore, then faded in the familiar rush of waves. In his small house at the edge of the training barracks, Eli Warren woke earlier than the rest. He brewed black coffee, placed the 2 worn leather notebooks on the table. One belonged to Captain Reyes, his mentor. The other to Khalid Rami, his enemy. 2 men from opposing sides, bound by a single rule. The predator who acts first, loses. He'd read them hundreds of times, yet each revealed something new. Not tactics, not coordinates or angles, but emotion. Reyes wrote with calm, like a teacher guiding a student to find stillness in chaos. Rami's slanted, hurried script was obsessive, as if he feared the silence he'd created. The same words, 2 meanings, one philosophy, two fates. Eli stacked the notebook, saying softly, "You both taught me. But now, I must teach others how not to become you." Outside, dawn light spilled over the training field. Young trainees lay prone, rifles aimed at the sand, their breaths fogging their scopes. Eli passed by, watching silently. He saw the eagerness in their eyes, the same look he had at 24, when he thought war was a game of skill and honor. He knelt beside a trainee whose hand shook as he fired, the bullet missing the target by inches. The kid cursed, punching the sand. Eli didn't scold, only said, "Don't shoot when you're angry, the wind will betray you." The young soldier asked, "When should I shoot, sir?" Eli looked out to sea, where the sun touched the horizon. "When you can see yourself through the scope," he said. "Otherwise, you won't know who you're killing." They fell silent. Only the steady waves remained, and the group's breathing slowed, blending into the air like a brief meditation. That afternoon, Eli returned to his seaside room. On the table, he opened Rhea's notebook to the last page. The old words stood like carvings in stone. "The predator, who acts first, loses." Below, his own edition from Torah Zara, "And the survivor must learn to live with the silence he creates." Today, he added one more. "But if he teaches others to hear that silence, the war might stop with him." He set the pen down, looked out the window. Far off, trainees laughed after practice. Their laughter, clear and unfamiliar to ears tuned to gunfire. He closed his eyes, smiling faintly. It was the sound of life, a sound Reyes never heard again, and Rami never understood. At dusk, Eli walked the beach. Waves erased footprints seconds after they formed, as if reminding him no one left a mark in war. Only stories endured. He stopped, gazing at the sinking sun. For a moment, he saw Reyes' silhouette across the horizon, smiling, rifle raised in salute. Eli nodded, whispering, "I waited long enough, sir." A sea breeze flipped the notebook in his hand, revealing Reyes' first line, "Patience is the greatest weapon." Eli closed it, tucked it into his pocket. He carried no rifle today, only silence, and the waves like a world's steady heartbeat. From now on, they didn't call him Hunter, just the teacher of patience. When the final night fell over Coronado, the sea turned black as spilled ink, swallowing all sound. Eli Warren sat on his porch, the breeze carrying salt and chill. Before him, the two leather notebooks lay like witnesses of Captain Marcus Reyes and Khalid Rami. A mentor, a foe, both teaching him the same. Patience could kill, but it could also save a soul. Eli lit a cigarette, inhaled deeply, then snuffed it out before the smoke could drift. He knew the hunt ended long ago, but life after war was the real challenge. For the echoes in a survivor's mind weren't gunfire, but the silence that lingered forever after. He stood, walking the sand where trainees had left footprints now mixed with waves. There, he heard laughter, wind, and the small sounds of ordinary life, things war once stole. Eli knew he'd fulfilled his final promise to Reyes, to end the cycle of hunters with silence. Now, every bullet he'd fired had become a lesson. Every loss, a story to retell. And in every trainee, he saw himself, but with brighter eyes, unclouded by war. He smiled faintly. Perhaps that was a sniper's only victory, teaching others not how to kill, but when to stop. Above, the first star flickered. The sea breeze carried a distant echo like Reyes' voice, like the radio in Torah Zara. "Don't shoot out of fear. Shoot because you believe the world deserves one more silence." Eli looked up, replying softly, "Roger that, Captain." And he walked on, leaving only waves and wind behind, where silence was no longer a haunt but a peace reclaimed.